You might be asking yourselves, James, why do you have this footage in the beginning of the video? I have some interesting news for you guys, and this might actually be... well, these aren't actually quite news, but not many people may be aware of this situation right now. If you didn't know about this, well, Capcom main director for combat system, Ryota Suzuki, actually switched to Square Enix a while ago. Now, for good or for bad, this might actually have some impact on the possible sequel that we have underway for Dragon's Dogma 2. But now, back again on the footage that I have on the beginning of the video. I mean, don't tell me that's not B in Dragon's Dogma or Dragon's Dogma in B. Well, but anyways, the attack animations, the animations for the attacks, the lightning, all that stuff, it's pretty much the same in Dragon's Dogma and in Devil May Cry 5. Now, what does this mean? This means that they are pretty much recycling assets, they are salvaging assets from previous games to be able to use them in the current games. Now, this is not a practice, this is not a new practice. If you play the later, not the later, but the first entries of the Devil May Cry games, then you know that the plunging attack animation for Dante, that thrusting that he does when he ends up like going forward with his sword and makes a thrust, it's pretty much similar to the same thrust attack animation that we have for the sword of the fighter character in Dragon's Dogma. Also, as you can see on B hairstyle, I mean, it's pretty much the same that I have in my character, in my mage character for Dragon's Dogma. Now, a little bit more on this. If you played against Fatalis in Monster Hunter World, then after you played against Grigori, like went back, because I certainly did, and dude, the scenario of it looks really similar. Also, the ballista things that you use to fight against Grigori, yeah, spoiler alert, it's just pretty much the same. So what does this mean? This means, like I mentioned previously before, that they are salvaging assets, and this is like not something new, but it is something that we should take in consideration when we discuss the things that we are about to discuss in a minute. Now, Dragon's Dogma, the biggest star of Dragon's Dogma, it's pretty much the combat system, the battle system. I mean, the story, I think it's a beautiful, well-written story with a well-written character languages, and also it's well voice acted. Sometimes here and there are some stumbles around other parts of it. It has some rough edges. Personally, I love it, but I understand if people don't actually like it. The strong is not the story where you have it all tangled up in the endgame content and then post-game and then New Game Plus, and it doesn't make sense to you if you haven't played all of this, and then there's these endings that don't really make sense, don't let you continue the game. It's just some tangled up stuff that I would understand if it doesn't actually feel everybody tastes. But for good or for bad, the battle director, the main battle director, is gone. It's no longer in Dragon's Dogma, in this possible project that we are going to get sooner or later. But is it going to be actually that hotly affected? I think not, personally. Because they already have some strong foundations on Dragon's Dogma gameplay. Now they just need to build in the direction that they want to, maybe refine the gameplay. We have Devil May Cry 5, which Ryota Suzuki actually was still working on the battle system for there. But the foundations, like I mentioned before, the assets that they can salvage for the combat system are still there. So I think it's safe to say that in the combat system department, there is not much to be afraid of. Now, on the last video that I posted, there was a lot of people concerned about the multiplayer aspects. Will we get a multiplayer, a proper co-op multiplayer in the upcoming sequel? And you know, I personally believe that Dragon's Dogma is a game that doesn't need multiplayer, if that makes sense. Now I think that this is a matter of personal tastes, there's some people that do enjoy multiplayer co-op game. I personally, myself, I do enjoy this kind of games. But where I feel that Dragon's Dogma doesn't actually need multiplayer, and if they add it, might actually not be as great as we think that it may be. Now let's take a look at this official statement. Let's take a look at this article where they talk about a little bit about their approach to the multiplayer elements. And I quote, "The game is primarily a single-player experience, but director Itsuno-san and the team really wanted to tell an epic story with 3 distinct perspectives and playstyles, with the main protagonists run into each other and collaborate from time to time." End of quote. And I quote, "So to make that a reality, they've implemented a system where, while connected to the internet, players may guest cameo appearances in other games in real time, or through ghost data gameplay recordings. Depending on the mission, you'll see another player in the background, but in other cases, you'll actually be slicing and dicing demons side by side with another players. Again, our focus is providing a single player experience like no other, so this cameo system also ensures the experience is always smooth as possible with no downtime." End of quote. Now, this is all personal opinion, the next things that I'm going to talk about, but I think it makes sense if you read along the lines. They don't actually need the multiplayer elements in their games, and to me, at least personally, I feel this reception, the reception for the multiplayer and the pawn system and the cameo system for Devil May Cry was actually somewhat of a mixed one. Not to say that it was actually poorly received by the community. Now, I truly believe that this is because they are being forced to implement this kind of features by Capcom. Why do I say that? We have to take in consideration that a while ago Capcom made some statements that they wanted to become one of the greatest development of video games companies out there and to be able to be on the vanguard of every single front out there. Now we know that on the multiplayer aspect, on the multiplayer front, they are actually performing quite well. Let's take in consideration that Dragon's Dogma Online on his very first day of launch got over 1 million downloads. That's a huge number, huge number, considering that the market was actually splitted in half because it's a game that only launched in the in the Eastern market, and we didn't actually get it in the Western, and still as of today we still didn't got the game on the Western market. Taking that in consideration, still 1 million downloads is just a massive amount, and the community of players was actually active out there. Now openly they are saying that they are trying to focus on the single player experience, but if you read actually along the lines of this article, you can see that they are trying to say that the multiplayer experience can hinder a little bit the experience that they are trying to provide to the players, and I actually get that because combat system for Dragon's Dogma, where we're talking about Devil May Cry in here, but if we take a look at Dragon's Dogma combat system, it's such a beautifully crafted, complicated combat system that the development of a multiplayer in it might actually hinder the development of it a little bit, where you have to take in consideration that trying to balance a combat system that's so deeply complex might actually be a problem for the developers, and might as well hinder a little bit the experience that they are trying to deliver in a single player kind of game. Now, I don't really think that Dragon's Dogma needs a co-op multiplayer, because the reason for multiplayer, one of them, it's actually add replayability value to the games. There's a whole lot of replayability value in Dragon's Dogma game just on itself. I played like 800 hours exploring in the depths of the dungeons of Bitter Black Isle fighting against the sheer full amount of monsters that we have to play, trying to get my gear, trying to level up my character and the build that I try to make him directed through. Now, I don't really think that we actually need a multiplayer, but let's take in consideration, just to wrap up the video, let's take in consideration that right now the top platinum game from Capcom is Monster Hunter World, which has sold over 18 million units. If you compare it to, for example, the Resident Evil games, each and every single one of them, like not the franchise as a whole, but the separate games throughout their various re-releases, are just so popular games that most of them sit around 8 million units of games sold. Monster Hunter is just tearing up. It's just ravaging up on the market. It's a beautiful game. I play Monster Hunter World and I get it. I love that game. But these combat systems, these multiplayer additions that we are getting in this game, in these games like Devil May Cry 5 and Dragon's Dogma, to me, at least personally, I don't know if this makes sense to you, but to me it feels like Capcom is trying to make them add these multiplayer features, saying like, hey dude, people want multiplayer, give them multiplayer, but they don't actually need that. And they are trying to develop these multiplayers just to have an excuse to say, hey dude, I have already developed it, it's there, you know, take a look, that's the multiplayer that I'm offering, that's the multiplayer that you asked for. But yeah, that's it. Taking in consideration that they already have the experience for Dragon's Dogma Online, taking in consideration the sheer full success that Monster Hunter World has out there, might actually a multiplayer be mandatory for Dragon's Dogma sequel. But if it's the right direction, well, I cannot tell. I think that we will have to wait a little bit more on that. With that being said, you beautiful gamers, that was RPJames giving you news, updates, content about latest stuff in video games. If you like the content, don't forget to subscribe, hit that like button. Tell me down in the comments below, would you like to have the combat system co-op in this game, in this sequel? Would you not, and why would you not like it? With that being said, I'll see you beautiful gamers. Don't you ever forget that each and every single one of you little people watching Old Mary, Old James are beautiful people. Stay safe, stay awesome. I'll see you later.